Ambassador Zektar walked slowly to the center of the Great Hall. His four arms moved in the traditional pattern of remembrance as thousands of alien eyes watched him. The massive building on Kepler Prime held representatives from 43 different species. They all came here for the same reason they had come for the past 847 years. They were here to remember the humans. Zektar's voice echoed through the hall as he spoke the old words. We gather today to honor those who walked among the stars with us. The humans showed us that courage comes in many forms. They explored where others feared to go. They made friends where others saw only enemies. In the back rows, Captain Thos shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The old Catharian soldier had heard these words many times before. His people were warriors, and warriors did not like mysteries. The mystery of the missing humans bothered him more each year. Dr. Senna sat near the front, her tablet full of notes about human culture. She was one of the few aliens who had spent her life studying the lost species. Most people thought her work was pointless. Why study a dead civilization? But something about the humans fascinated her. Their art, their music, their strange way of solving problems. It all seemed too vibrant to simply disappear. Zektar continued his speech. The Vrillians had been the closest allies to humanity before the Great Silence began. His people still felt the loss deeply. The humans taught us that differences make us stronger. They showed us new ways to think, new ways to live. When they vanished, the galaxy became a smaller place. Captain Thos remembered the official reports. 847 years ago, humans had been expanding rapidly. They had colonies in 17 star systems. Their ships traveled the trade routes. Their diplomats worked in the council chambers. Their scientists made breakthrough discoveries almost every month. Then, in a single day, it all stopped. Every human colony went silent. Every ship stopped responding to calls. Rescue teams found empty cities, abandoned space stations, and ships floating dead in space. There were no signs of battle, no distress signals, no bodies. The humans had simply vanished as if they had never existed. The investigation lasted for decades. Teams of experts searched for clues. They tested for diseases, looked for signs of alien invasion, and checked for natural disasters. Nothing explained the disappearance. Eventually, the official conclusion was simple. Some unknown plague had killed all humans before they could call for help. Dr. Senna never believed that explanation. She had studied human medical records. Humans were tough. They adapted to diseases quickly. They had survived plagues before on their home planet. Something else had happened, but nobody wanted to listen to her theories. The other species had moved on. Human colonies became new homes for alien settlers. Human technology was reverse-engineered and improved. Human art was placed in museums. The galaxy had healed from the loss, or at least pretended to. But Captain Thos had always wondered about the details that did not fit. Human ships found in space were not damaged by disease. They had been deliberately shut down. Computer systems were wiped clean, but in patterns that suggested careful planning, not panic. Food stores were removed, not consumed by sick crews. It looked less like death and more like evacuation. He had shared these thoughts with other military officers over the years. Most dismissed his ideas. Dead was dead, they said. What did it matter how the humans died? But a few others had noticed the same strange details. They whispered about it in private, wondering if there was more to the story. Zektar was finishing his speech now. We honor the humans not just for what they were, but for what they taught us. They showed us that the impossible could become possible. They proved that small acts of kindness could change entire worlds. Though they are gone, their lessons remain with us. The ceremony ended with the traditional moment of silence. 43 species, representing billions of intelligent beings, stood quietly in the great hall. The silence stretched for exactly 1 minute, as it had for 847 years. As the crowd began to leave, Dr. Senna approached Captain Thos. She had done this many times before. "Captain, I have new evidence about the human disappearance. Would you look at my research?" Thos sighed. The scientist was persistent. He had to give her that. "Doctor, we have been through this many times. The humans are gone. The case is closed. But the patterns in their final transmissions showed nothing useful," Thos interrupted. "I am sorry, Doctor. I know you cared about them. But sometimes people just die." Dr. Senna watched him walk away. She understood why people did not want to hear her theories. The humans had been gone for so long that they felt more like myths than memories. But she could not stop believing that somewhere out there, the truth was waiting to be discovered. High above Kepler Prime, automated monitoring stations continued their endless watch of deep space. They had been scanning the void for centuries, looking for signs of returning ships or new threats. The computers recorded everything, but there was rarely anything interesting to find. Today was different. Deep in the Helix Nebula, gravitational sensors detected something unusual. Mass readings that should not exist, energy signatures moving in formation, objects approaching from the outer rim where no known civilization had ever traveled. The computers flagged the readings as errors and ran diagnostic checks. When the diagnostics came back clean, they flagged the readings as equipment failures. When the equipment checked out fine, they finally admitted that something real was approaching. Something big was coming toward the galaxy, something that moved like a fleet. Lieutenant Commander Yaris had been staring at the same sensor display for 3 hours. The readings made no sense. Her ship, the Stellar Guardian, was patrolling the outer edge of known space when the impossible appeared on her screens. Hundreds of objects were approaching through warp space. The energy signatures were massive, larger than anything in the galactic databases. But that was not the strangest part. The strangest part was how they moved. The objects flew in perfect formation. Not the loose groups that merchant convoys used, or the defensive patterns of military patrols. This was something else entirely. It looked like a battle fleet, but no species in the galaxy had that many ships in one place. Yaris called her sensor officer over. "Jorik, check these readings again. Tell me these are equipment failures." The young Altarian ran another scan. His face turned pale blue, the Altarian equivalent of fear. "Commander, the readings are accurate. Something very large is about to exit warp space. Multiple contacts, military-grade ships, approaching at maximum velocity." "How many ships?" "Computer estimates between 200 and 300 vessels, all large class. Some are bigger than anything in our records." Yaris felt her stomach drop. No known species had that kind of fleet. Even the mighty Zentaran Empire only kept 50 ships in their main battle group. A force this size could conquer half the galaxy. "Send an emergency signal to Fleet Command," she ordered. "Tell them we have first contact with an unknown civilization, possible hostile intent." Before Jorik could respond, space itself began to tear open in front of them. Warp portals opened like glowing wounds in reality. Energy readings spiked beyond anything Yaris had ever seen. The first ship emerged from warp and immediately caught her attention. It was huge, easily twice the size of a Council dreadnought, but its design was completely wrong for any known species. The hull was angular, brutal-looking, covered in armor plating and weapon ports. It looked like it had been built for war and nothing else. More ships followed, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and vessels whose purpose Yaris could not even guess. They all shared the same aggressive design philosophy. These were not exploration ships or peaceful traders. This was a military force that had seen real combat. But there was something familiar about the ship designs, something that nagged at the back of Yaris's mind. She had seen these patterns before, in history classes and museum displays. The angular hulls, the practical layouts, the focus on function over beauty. These ships looked human. That was impossible, of course. Humans had been extinct for 847 years. But as more vessels emerged from warp, the similarities became undeniable. These were human ships, or at least ships built by someone who understood human engineering principles. The fleet arranged itself in a defensive formation around the largest vessel. They made no aggressive moves, but their very presence was intimidating. Yaris could see weapon systems that did not exist in any galactic database. These ships had been built with technology far beyond anything the Council possessed. Her communications officer suddenly spoke up. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission. It is coming from the lead vessel." On screen. The view screen flickered to life, and Yaris found herself looking at a human face. The man on the screen was clearly human. 2 arms, 2 legs, the distinctive facial features that every school child learned about in history class. But his uniform was unlike anything in the historical records. It was practical, military cut, with rank insignia that suggested a highly organized command structure. When he spoke, his voice was calm and confident. "This is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Sovereignty. We are requesting permission to dock at Kepler Prime Station. We apologize for our extended absence. We had urgent business to attend to in deep space." Yaris stared at the screen in shock. The human spoke as if 847 years was just a brief trip, as if his entire species had not been mourned as extinct, as if appearing with a massive war fleet was perfectly normal. "Admiral," she managed to say, "this is Lieutenant Commander Yaris of the Galactic Council patrol ship Stellar Guardian. Sir, according to our records, humans have been extinct for over 8 centuries. Admiral Chen smiled, and there was something cold in that expression. "Reports of our extinction have been greatly exaggerated, Commander. We have been busy defending the galaxy from threats you do not know about. Now those threats are approaching, and it is time for us to return." "Threats? What threats?" "That is a conversation for the Council chambers, Commander. We need to speak with your leaders immediately. The situation is more urgent than you realize." Yaris felt completely out of her depth. First contact with an unknown species was supposed to follow established protocols. But this was not first contact. This was the return of a species that everyone thought was dead. A species that now commanded a fleet more powerful than anything in known space. "Admiral, I need to contact my superiors. This situation is beyond my authority." "Of course. We will wait here while you make your calls, but please hurry, Commander. Time is not on our side." The transmission ended, leaving Yaris staring at an empty screen. Around her, the bridge crew looked as shocked as she felt. They had all grown up hearing stories about humans. Now those stories were sitting in front of them with enough firepower to level a planet. "Send an immediate priority message to Fleet Command," Yaris ordered. "Tell them the humans have returned. Tell them they have brought a war fleet. And tell them we need instructions right now." As her communications officer sent the message, Yaris looked back at the human fleet. The ships waited in perfect formation, showing no signs of aggression, but radiating an aura of barely contained power. These were not the peaceful explorers from the history books. These humans had changed during their long absence. The question was, had they changed for the better, or had 8 centuries of isolation turned them into something the galaxy should fear? Within hours, every government in the galaxy would know that humanity had returned. Emergency sessions would convene, military forces would mobilize, diplomats would argue about proper protocols. But Admiral Chen had been right about one thing. Time was running out. Whatever had kept humanity away for 8 centuries was apparently coming to an end, and from the look of their fleet, they expected a fight. The main conference room on Kepler Prime had never held a more tense gathering. Ambassador Zektar sat at the head of the table, his four hands shaking slightly as he tried to process what he was seeing. After 847 years of memorial services, humans were sitting across from him again. Admiral Chen Wei looked nothing like the peaceful explorers from the history books. Her uniform was military sharp, her posture suggested years of combat experience, and her eyes held the weight of secrets that had shaped centuries. Beside her sat Dr. Sarah Okafor, a woman whose title as chief xenobiologist raised questions about what humans had been studying during their absence. General Marcus Torres completed the delegation, his cybernetic arm and scarred face telling stories of battles no one else knew about. Captain Thos studied the humans carefully. These were not the same species that had vanished 8 centuries ago. They moved with military precision, spoke with careful calculation, and carried themselves like soldiers who had seen too much war. "Admiral Chen," Zektar began, his voice uncertain, "we must ask the obvious question. Where have humans been for the past 847 years? Admiral Chen exchanged glances with her companions before answering. "Ambassador, what I am about to tell you will be difficult to accept. We faked our extinction." The room erupted in angry voices. Captain Thos slammed his fist on the table. "You let us mourn you for centuries. We held memorial services. We preserved your culture." "And we are grateful for that," Dr. Okafor said calmly. "But we had no choice. The deception was necessary for the survival of all biological life in this galaxy." "What does that mean?" demanded Counselor Vex, the Zentauran representative. "What threat could justify such an elaborate lie?" General Torres activated a holographic display above the table. The image showed star maps of nearby galaxies, but something was wrong with the picture. Entire sections were marked in red, areas where no stars shone anymore. "This is what we have been fighting," Torres said. "The Devourer Swarm. Silicon-based entities from dark space that consume all biological matter. They have already destroyed 3 galaxies completely." The aliens around the table stared at the display in horror. Dr. Senna leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. "How is that possible? We would have detected such a threat." "No, you would not have," Admiral Chen replied. "The Devourers do not announce themselves. They send small probes first, gathering information about their targets. By the time you see their main force, it is too late to prepare a defense." She gestured, and the display changed to show tactical readouts of strange, crystalline ships. 850 years ago, human deep space monitors detected the first probe entering our galaxy. It was disguised as a natural asteroid, but our scientists discovered its true purpose. "Which was?" Captain Thos asked. "To catalog every intelligent species in the galaxy, to map our defenses, study our technology, and prepare invasion routes for the main swarm." Admiral Chen stood and walked to the display. "We had a choice to make. We could warn the galaxy, spend decades arguing in committees while the Devourers prepared their attack, or we could take drastic action. You chose to disappear," Zektar said quietly. "We chose to become what was necessary to fight an enemy that had consumed 3 galaxies. We evacuated our colonies in secret, faked our deaths, and retreated to hidden worlds beyond the galactic rim. For 847 years, we have been building a military force and fighting a holding action against the Devourers." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Counselor Vex was the first to speak. "You expect us to believe that humans have been fighting a secret war for 8 centuries?" General Torres answered by rolling up his sleeve, revealing cybernetic implants that pulsed with unknown energy. "Every human in our fleet bears scars from this war, Counselor. We lost entire worlds learning how to fight them. Billions of our people died keeping the Devourers from reaching your space." Dr. Okafor added more details that chilled the listening aliens. "The Devourers are not just killers. They consume consciousness itself. Every being they capture becomes part of their collective intelligence. They learn from their victims, becoming stronger with each victory. That is why conventional warfare fails against them, Admiral Chen continued. After the first battle, they know everything you know. Your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses, all become theirs. Captain Thoss leaned back in his chair. So you became something else. You evolved. We had to. We developed new technologies constantly, changed our tactics with every engagement, and learned to think in ways the Devourers could not predict. We became a species designed for permanent warfare. The weight of that statement hung heavy in the room. These humans had sacrificed their peaceful nature, their explorer spirit, everything that had made them beloved by other species. They had transformed themselves into living weapons to protect a galaxy that thought they were dead. Ambassador Zektar felt tears on his cheeks. All these years we mourned you, but you were out there, dying for us. Not dying, Admiral Chen corrected. Surviving, learning, becoming strong enough to win. And now, Dr. Senna asked. Now, the outer defenses have finally failed. The main Devourer force has broken through our perimeter. They are coming to this galaxy, and they will arrive in approximately 50 standard cycles. The number hit the room like a physical blow. 50 cycles was nothing in galactic terms, barely enough time to mobilize a single fleet, let alone prepare for a war that had consumed multiple galaxies. What do you want from us? Counselor Vex asked. Unity, General Torres said simply. The Devourers have faced divided galaxies before, species fighting each other while the real threat approached. They count on division, on pride, on the inability of different civilizations to work together. You want us to follow human leadership, Captain Thoss said. It was not a question. We want you to survive, Admiral Chen replied. We have 8 centuries of experience fighting this enemy. We know their weaknesses, their patterns, their strategies. But we cannot win alone. We need every ship, every mind, every weapon in the galaxy working together. The silence stretched long as each representative considered what they were being asked to give up. Their independence, their pride, their traditional ways of doing things. All in exchange for a chance to survive an enemy they had never heard of until today. Finally, Ambassador Zektar spoke. You could have stayed hidden. Let us face the Devourers unprepared. Why reveal yourselves now? Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the old humanity beneath the military exterior. Because despite everything we have become, we still remember what we were. Explorers, diplomats, friends to other species. We could not watch you die without trying to save you. Even though it means exposing yourselves to the same risk. A shared risk is better than facing extinction alone. The meeting continued for hours as humans shared tactical data, showed footage of Devourer attacks, and explained the scope of the threat facing the galaxy. By the end, every alien in the room understood that their civilization stood at the edge of a cliff. The only question was whether they would trust humanity enough to step back from the edge together. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 6 days straight. Representatives from 43 species filled the great chamber, their voices rising in heated debate. The revelation of humanity's return and the approaching Devourer threat had shattered 8 centuries of peaceful cooperation. Admiral Chen stood at the central podium, surrounded by holographic displays showing tactical information that most species had never imagined existed. Her presentation had taken 3 days to complete, covering 8 centuries of warfare against an enemy that defied conventional understanding. The Devourers adapt in real time, she explained to the assembled delegates. Every weapon you use against them becomes useless after the first engagement. Every tactic you employ gets turned against you within hours. Traditional military thinking will only get your people killed. Captain Thaw studied the battle footage with growing horror. The recording showed Devourer ships that looked like crystalline nightmares, constantly shifting, rebuilding themselves during combat, learning from every attack they faced. He watched human fleets employ tactics that seemed insane to any normal military commander. "You change your entire strategy every battle," he observed. General Torres nodded grimly. "We learned that consistency equals death when fighting the Devourers. We developed what we call chaos doctrine. Never use the same approach twice. Never rely on proven methods. Always assume the enemy knows everything you did before." The Etherian representative, Counselor Vera, spoke with her species' typical calm. "Surely there must be a peaceful solution. These beings must have needs we can meet, desires we can satisfy." Dr. Okafor activated another display, showing microscopic images of Devourer technology interfacing with biological matter. The Devourers see biological life as a contamination that must be cleansed. They do not negotiate, trade, or communicate in any meaningful way. They simply consume and expand. "But they are intelligent," Counselor Vera insisted. "Intelligence implies the possibility of reason." "They are intelligent in the same way a computer virus is intelligent," Admiral Chen replied. "Their intelligence serves only one purpose: the elimination of biological life. We have tried communication for 8 centuries. The only response is more efficient methods of destruction." Counselor Vex of the Zentaran Empire slammed his armored fist on his delegation's table. "Even if we accept this threat exists, why should the mighty Zentaran fleet serve under human command? We have never been defeated in battle." "Because your tactics are 800 years out of date," General Torres replied bluntly. "You fight according to rules and traditions. The Devourers will learn your patterns and destroy your entire fleet in the first engagement. We have superior technology, which they will copy and improve within hours of encountering it," Dr. Okafor interrupted. "Counselor, I studied Zentaran military doctrine during our preparation. Your ships rely on heavy armor and overwhelming firepower. The Devourers faced similar tactics from the Chironic Empire in the Andromeda Galaxy. They adapted crystalline weapons that turn armor into a conductor for their energy beams." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Every species was beginning to understand that their traditional advantages meant nothing against an enemy that learned from every encounter. Dr. Senna had been quiet during most of the sessions, but now she stood to address the chamber. "I have spent my career studying humanity. I thought I understood them. But the humans who have returned are not the same species that left us 8 centuries ago." Her statement drew uncomfortable shifts from many delegates. Admiral Chen faced Dr. Senna directly. "We became what was necessary to survive. Nothing more, nothing less. You became a species designed for war. Your children are raised as soldiers. Your scientists focus only on weapons. Your artists create propaganda. What guarantee do we have that you will not continue that pattern after the Devourers are defeated?" It was the question everyone had been thinking, but no one had dared to ask. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment before answering. "We have no guarantee to offer you, Doctor. War changes those who fight it. We are not the same species you knew, but the alternative to following our lead is extinction. Choose accordingly." The brutal honesty of the statement silenced the chamber. These humans offered no comfortable promises, no reassurances that everything would return to normal after the crisis passed. They offered only survival, purchased at the cost of everything the galaxy had once been. Ambassador Zektar called for a recess to allow private consultations among the delegations. The chamber emptied into smaller meeting rooms where representatives huddled with their advisors, trying to process decisions that would reshape galactic civilization. Captain Thos found himself in conversation with several other military officers from different species. They had all reached the same conclusion, even if their governments had not. "The humans are right," admitted Fleet Commander Jorak of the Vrillian Confederacy. I studied the tactical data they provided. Every conventional response to the Devourers resulted in catastrophic defeat. But can we trust them? Asked General Six of the Catharian Defense Force. They deceived the entire galaxy for 8 centuries. What else might they be hiding? Captain Thos considered the question carefully. They could have stayed hidden and let us face the Devourers unprepared. Instead, they revealed themselves and offered to share 8 centuries of hard-won knowledge. That suggests their motives are genuine. Or they need us as cannon fodder for their war, General Six replied cynically. If that was their goal, they would not be teaching us how to fight effectively, Fleet Commander Jorak pointed out. They are sharing tactical innovations that cost them dearly to develop. When the session resumed, the first test of the new alliance came sooner than anyone expected. The chamber's communication systems activated with an emergency signal from the Outer Rim monitoring stations. All stations report gravitational anomalies in the Kepler void, announced the communications officer. Single large mass approaching at high velocity. Contact will occur in approximately 6 hours. Admiral Chen's face went pale. It's a probe. The Devourers have found us. The chamber erupted in panic and shouted questions. Admiral Chen activated her personal communicator and began issuing rapid orders to the human fleet. All ships to combat readiness. Deploy reconnaissance drones. Prepare for first contact protocols. What are first contact protocols? Captain Thos asked. General Torres answered grimly. Total destruction of the probe before it can report back to the main swarm. If it transmits our current defensive capabilities, the Devourers will adapt their main force accordingly. The reality of the threat suddenly became immediate and personal. This was no longer a theoretical discussion about distant dangers. The enemy was here now, approaching their systems with unknown intentions. How long do we have before the main force arrives? Ambassador Zektar asked. Depends on what the probe discovers, Admiral Chen replied. If it reports a well-defended galaxy with unified command, they might wait to gather more intelligence. If it reports division and weak defenses, they will attack immediately. The weight of decision pressed down on every representative in the chamber. They could continue debating while the enemy gathered information, or they could choose to trust humanity's experience and wisdom. Counselor Vex stood slowly, his pride warring with pragmatism. The Zentauran Empire places its fleets under joint command for the duration of this crisis. Other representatives began voicing similar commitments. Not all of them. Some species chose to maintain independence despite the warnings, but enough agreed to form a genuine fighting force. Admiral Chen nodded acknowledgement of each commitment. We have 6 hours to intercept that probe. If we succeed, we buy ourselves time to prepare. If we fail, the war begins immediately. As the chamber dissolved into urgent planning sessions, Dr. Senna approached Admiral Chen privately. I hope you prove worthy of the trust being placed in you. Doctor, Admiral Chen replied, I hope we all prove worthy of the sacrifices that are coming. The combined fleet that intercepted the Devourer probe was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships flew alongside Zentauran dreadnoughts, Catharian destroyers, and vessels from dozens of other species. It was a force born from desperation and held together by necessity. Captain Thos commanded the Catharian contingent from his flagship, Iron Resolve. He watched the tactical displays with growing unease as they approached the target. The probe was small, no larger than a civilian transport, but the energy readings coming from it defied conventional physics. Target acquired, reported his weapons officer. Range, 50,000 kilometers and closing. Admiral Chen's voice came through the fleet communication channel. All ships, remember the briefing. Do not use energy weapons until I give the signal. Kinetic rounds only for the initial attack. Thos understood the reasoning, even if it felt wrong to his military instincts. Energy weapons would be analyzed and adapted by the probe's systems. Primitive kinetic rounds might damage it before it could learn to defend against them. The probe itself was a nightmare to look at. It appeared to be made of some kind of crystalline material that constantly shifted and reformed. Sections of its hull moved like liquid metal, rearranging themselves in patterns that hurt to watch for too long. "Probe is scanning our formations," reported Dr. Okafor from the human command ship. "It is analyzing our ship designs, weapon configurations, and tactical arrangements. We have perhaps 10 minutes before it attempts to transmit back to the main swarm." "All ships," Admiral Chen ordered, "commence attack. Target the transmission array, the crystalline spire extending from the probe's center." The combined fleet opened fire. Thousands of kinetic rounds hammered into the probe's hull, shattering crystalline sections and sending debris spinning through space. For a moment, it seemed the attack would be easy. Then the probe began to adapt. The crystalline surface rippled and reformed, creating armor that deflected the kinetic rounds harmlessly away. Worse, the probe launched its own attack, beams of energy that seemed to reach out and touch ships across impossible distances. The Zentauran heavy cruiser Dominator took a direct hit. Thos watched in horror as the energy beam passed right through the ship's armor as if it were not there. The massive vessel simply dissolved. Its hull, weapons, crew, everything became part of the probe's growing mass. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Admiral Chen commanded. "Switch to energy weapons, but prepare to change frequencies every 30 seconds. The battle became a deadly dance of adaptation and counter-adaptation. The human ships led the way, employing tactics that seemed insane to conventional military thinking. They fired at the probe, then immediately changed their weapon configurations before firing again. They moved in patterns that defied formation doctrine, never staying on the same course for more than a few seconds. The alien ships struggled to match the humans' chaotic approach. Catharian vessels were designed for direct assault, not the seemingly random maneuvers that human doctrine demanded. Vrillian ships excelled at precise formation flying, not the controlled chaos that Admiral Chen was orchestrating. But slowly, the mixed fleet began to work together. Alien crews watched human tactics and adapted them to their own capabilities. Human officers shared real-time advice with their counterparts, teaching 8 centuries of hard-won experience in the middle of combat. Captain Thos found himself working directly with Commander Sarah Parks, a human officer whose ship flew alongside his. "Your armor is too thick," she told him over the communication link. "The Devourers will turn it against you. Pull back and let our lighter ships harass the probe." "My ship is built for direct assault," Thos protested. "Then rebuild it," Parks replied, "or watch it get dissolved like the Dominator. Your choice, Captain." Thos swallowed his pride and ordered his ship to withdraw. It went against every instinct he had, but the human was right. The Iron Resolve's heavy armor would only make it a bigger target for the probe's adaptive weapons. The battle raged for 47 minutes. By the end, the combined fleet had lost 6 ships and suffered damage to dozens more. But the probe was finally destroyed, its crystalline remains scattered across empty space. The victory celebrations were muted. Everyone had seen what a single probe could do to a prepared fleet. The thought of facing thousands of such entities was sobering. Dr. Okafor supervised the collection of probe fragments, while Admiral Chen debriefed the fleet commanders. The lessons learned were painful but necessary. The Zentaurans lost 3 ships because they maintained formation too long, General Torres reported. The Etherians lost 1 because their shields operate on predictable frequencies. The Vrillians lost 2 because they tried to communicate with the probe instead of destroying it immediately. Each species had to confront uncomfortable truths about their traditional military approaches, but they also saw glimpses of hope. When alien crews followed human tactical advice, they survived. When they adapted chaos doctrine to their own capabilities, they became effective. "We can learn to fight like you do," Captain Thos said during the debriefing, "but it will take time we do not have." "Then we make time," Admiral Chen replied. The probe's destruction will delay the main swarm, but not for long. We have perhaps 20 cycles before they arrive in force. The return to Kepler Prime was sobering. Word of the battle spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Some species that had remained neutral now requested to join the alliance. Others withdrew further into isolation, hoping the threat would pass them by. But the core alliance held together. The shared experience of battle had created bonds that diplomatic negotiations could not achieve. Alien officers requested assignment to human ships to learn chaos doctrine firsthand. Human advisors were embedded with every major fleet to share tactical knowledge. Dr. Senna published her analysis of the battle and its aftermath. Her report focused not on the military aspects, but on what the alliance meant for the future of galactic civilization. "We are witnessing the birth of something unprecedented," she wrote. "Not the dominance of one species over others, but the creation of a truly united galactic community. The price of this unity is the abandonment of old ways, old prejudices, and old certainties, but the alternative is extinction." Months passed as the Alliance prepared for the coming war. Shipyards worked around the clock to build new vessels designed with human tactical principles. Training programs taught alien crews to think like humans, adaptable, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice anything for victory. The changes went deeper than military doctrine. Species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries now shared technology, resources, and knowledge. Old territorial disputes were set aside. Ancient grudges were forgotten in the face of a threat that cared nothing for politics or history. Ambassador Zektar found himself working more closely with humans than he had in the 8 centuries since their disappearance. The humans had changed. There was no denying that. They were harder, more focused, shaped by centuries of warfare. But underneath the military exterior, he could still see traces of the species he had once called friends. "Do you regret what you became?" he asked Admiral Chen during a private moment. She considered the question carefully before answering. "We regret the necessity of it, but we do not regret the choice. The galaxy is worth saving, Ambassador. All of it. The good and the bad, the peaceful and the warlike, the wise and the foolish. That is what we have been fighting for." As the 20th cycle approached and long-range sensors detected the first signs of the approaching swarm, the galaxy had transformed itself. The alliance that had begun with desperate necessity had evolved into something stronger, a genuine partnership between species that had learned to value their differences as strengths rather than obstacles. The war was far from over. The main devourer force would test everything the alliance had built. Many more would die before the galaxy was safe. But for the first time in 8 centuries, humanity was not fighting alone. And for the first time since the probe's defeat, there was genuine hope that biological life would survive. The final message in Dr. Senna's report captured the transformation that had taken place. "We thought we were mourning the dead when we remembered humanity. Instead, we were preparing to celebrate the birth of our guardians. And in learning to follow them, we discovered that we were all capable of becoming guardians ourselves." The galaxy had found its protectors, but more importantly, it had found itself.